Hello everyone, welcome back. So today I want to discuss a third specialized area that has received very little attention from the Canadian philatelic community, and that is the definitive issues um, after the Admiral period up to the beginning of the Elizabethan period. All the pictorial sets with the kings. In Unitrade, they all have very basic listings with maybe one or two plate varieties and a few little shade varieties here and there. Um, Even though there are marked differences in gum on the backs of these stamps and even subtle differences in the paper used to print them, there's been literally no attention paid in the catalog to these differences. I'm not really exactly sure why that is, because when you take the time to pay attention to the differences and to study them in detail, um, they're actually quite significant. And certainly every bit as much as on the admirals or the small queens or the large queens or any of the issues that have received the amount of attention that they have. But for some reason, these issues have not, and they're very beautiful stamps. So it's really surprising to me that they haven't been studied to the depth that they could be. And so, over the next several months to the next couple of years, I want to spend time delving into them and documenting the differences on the website and in a series of videos. And so I'm going to start with the issue um, that lies most readily at hand that I had started offering a few months back but never really completed. And that is the 1937 to 42 Mufti issue, the first George VI issue of the period. Um, I had previously offered the high values, but I didn't really have a organized system for describing and naming and classifying the paper and gum types with the rigor that I developed when I studied the small queens most recently. So I decided to start there. I have now, as of today, identified um, many different papers on this issue, all the way from, I call them by their origin, which is Canadian Banknote Company. So I each type I put CBN and then a dash and then a letter, um, exactly the way I did with the small queens. So I've now identified CBN type A through CBN type P. And I'm up to the 13-cent value. I started with the 10-cent memorial chamber today, and I got all the way through the 13-cent. Um, and I suspect that I've identified most, if not all, the papers used on the high values at least. I am going inevitably probably to find more on the low values. But I think probably I've gotten most of what exists, but we'll see as I go through. I'm also trying to study the used stamps and tie the dated copies back to the types that I'm identifying, so that we can get some idea, definitive idea, of when the papers were introduced and when they were used. The other thing I've started doing is carefully looking at the perforations. Um, many years ago, it was published in the Canadian Philatelist that there was a change in perf in the 1962 definitives, where Julian Goldberg had identified perf 11.85 and 11.9. It's commonly understood in the Canadian catalog that, everything from 1935 and up is perf 12. Um, But I decided to go back and study this again and check the perfs on the Mufti issues. And lo and behold, I'm finding 12, 11.9 by 12, 11.9, 11.95 by 12, 11.85 by 12, and various combinations. So it seems fairly clear to me that these differences have existed probably since the very beginning of the modern Canadian banknote printings from 1935 and up. It's just that nobody has really documented or studied them in detail. And Julian just happened to check the perforations on the stamps he was looking at. So it'll be interesting to follow that through and to see where that leads. But my suspicion is that we're going to find probably a number of common perfs that are present on most of the stamps, and then we'll find one or two scarcer compounds that one hardly sees, which is exciting. It's another branch that we can take collecting this issue off into. And I'm also documenting the 4 and 5 hole OHMS perfins, the positions that I'm finding, the paper types, which positions or with which paper types and printings, private perfins as well, and so on and so forth. So I've done a schedule in the auction. Originally, I was going to cover this issue in a week, and it's become very apparent to me just from working on it today that a week is nowhere near enough time to properly appreciate this issue. And so, I've expanded this into about 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks to cover this issue properly in all its aspects. So, so please take a look at the auction listings, and I've put on my website now a new section. I'm just going to turn the camera around and just show you my website. So if you look, there we go. So if you look, just get a full view of the screen. So if you're on my home page here, up the menu here, okay, the main menu, I've added another heading called Stamp Issue Tables. And that, if you click on that, you get two menus now. I've got one for Canada and provinces, one for New Zealand and Australia. And here I've now got the large queen paper types, small queen paper types. So that's the table that I was developing over the last several months for small queens. The small queen printings chart linked to paper types. So that was the little table that used to appear in the preamble for the auction. I just cut it out because I'm not going to be doing small queens for a little while now. So I moved it here. And so now we've got Canadian Banknote Company papers and gums. So this is the table that I have so far that I produced today with the different types. And then I've also got the pictorial high values of the Mufti issue. So I've done a table now for the high values. And this will be a table in progress, a work in progress, as I work on the issue this next several weeks, and each and every time that I offer it and come back to it. And so I'm hopeful that you folks, if you find varieties that are not in my table and you wish to write to me and let me know what you found and what you have, I can continue to develop this and have it as a shared resource. So that's what I have for Canada and provinces, and then New Zealand, I've got a table that I did for New Zealand, and I want to do tonight another one for Australia, but at the moment, that's what I have. So, yeah, I'm quite excited about this issue. So far, there are quite a few types of paper and gum that I've only found one or two examples of. They may or may not be rare or scarce. I mean, I've only got a fairly small amount of material to work with now, but it is pretty apparent to me, having worked on this issue several times now, that the mint examples always seem to come from the same two or three printings. One thing that does come out now is that the soft horizontal wove papers and soft vertical wove papers with clear mesh, those appear to be, and with the creamy sort of crackly gum, those appear to be from 1942 as some of the last printings from the set. Most notably, the Anline ink $1 is from this printing. The earlier 1938-39 printings seem to be, for the most part, either scarce or quite common. Generally, the very first printings seem to be quite prevalent, and the very last printings seem to be prevalent in this issue in mint condition. So the difficult stamps appear to be the ones from the middle of the issue, 1940, 41, where most of them were used up, which makes a lot of sense if you think that most collectors would have bought their stamps at the beginning of the issue. Most dealers would have filled out their stocks when the issue first came out, and then they just didn't pay any attention to or buy any new ones while the issue was, you know, coming out. The Anline ink, I think, is an exception because it was probably noticed by dealers and bought up at that time. But the late printings of the other values are not as easy to find. So, you know, there are some things to look out for on this issue. And as I said, you know, there are certain combinations of perfs, papers, and probably some of the perfins that are not easy to find. So there's a lot of exciting study to be done on this issue, as well as all the other issues of that period. And I'm going to tackle each and every one of them and put as much information as I can online as I go along. So follow along and enjoy and learn, and then look at your stamps with a whole new, fresh new set of eyes. That's the whole point of this hobby. And 90% of the fun is in slowing down and looking very carefully at what you have. Anytime you gloss over this material or go through it very quickly, you're going to miss a lot of what's there. So anyway, thanks for watching, and have fun. Okay, bye.